نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال سننظر أصدقت أم كنت من الكاذبين اذهب بكتابي هذا فالقه إليهم ثم تول عنهم فانظر ماذا يرجعون. قالت يا أيها الملأ إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. قالت يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون. قالوا نحن أولو قوة وأولو بأس شديد والأمر إليك فانظري ماذا تأمرين. قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة وكذلك يفعلون. وإني مرسلة إليهم بهدية فناظرة بما يرجع المرسلون. فلما جاء سليمان قال أتمدونني بمال فما آتاني الله خير مما آتاكم بل أنتم بهديتكم تفرحون. ارجع إليهم فلنأتينهم بجنود لا قبل لهم بها ولنخرجنهم منها أذلة وهم صاغرون. Respectful honorable friends, in the verses that have been recited to you, we continue with mention of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu salam, and specifically in this ruku and the previous ruku, where Allah Ta'ala mentions the incident between Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu salam and the Malika of Saba, Bilqis, and how Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu salam had given da'wat to her. In last week's tafseer we had covered that how Hudhud, the hoop-owl bird, which had absconded or was missing at the time when Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu salam needed it. But then when asked and inquired, the Hudhud brought some information to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu salam with regards to Bilqis, where he had mentioned that I discovered that a woman rules over them. Inni wajadtu imratan tamlikuhum, the Qawm Saba, and that she has been given a throne as well. But at the same time, وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا يَسْجُدُونَ لِلشَّمْسِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, that she and her people, what they are doing is they are worshipping the sun, leaving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu salam then had to deal with the matter and present da'wah to her, Islam to her. And that is mentioned, the manner in which this transpired is mentioned in the following verses. Allah Ta'ala says that قَالَ سَنَنْصُرُ وَصَدَقْتَ أَمْ كُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. قَالَ referring to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. The Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam said to Hudhud that سَنَنْصُرُ أَصَدَقْتَ أَمْ كُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Now we shall soon see whether you have spoken the truth, أَمْ كُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ, or whether you are from the liars. We show that even the birds at the time were given a fair trial as well, an opportunity, prove the fact, and let's see that what you have said is true or not. And as had been mentioned in last week's tafseer, that from these incidents we understand that how Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was not granted knowledge of the unseen. اذهب بكتابي هذا فألقي إليهم ثم تول عنهم فانظر ماذا يرجعون. اذهب بكتابي, go with this letter of mine. فألقي إليهم, and throw it to them. ثم تول عنهم, it was a bird won't be able to present it in such a manner. ثم تول عنهم, then turn away from them. فانظر ماذا يرجعون, and see what reply they give. Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam wrote a letter, the contents of which are mentioned in the Qur'an itself. And Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam taught Hudhud some etiquette here as well. That after presenting the letter, do not just stand there. But etiquette is that even if when you approach somebody, and now you've given them a message, so when you go to somebody senior, then you just don't sit there in front of him in their face. You move back a bit, and then let them deal with the matter, so you are not in the face, in other words. Out of respect, you sit on the side. ثُمَّ تَوَلَّ عَنْهُمْ, and then move away from there, and at the same time, do not just leave it there, but فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا يَرْجِعُونَ, just observe what the outcome is of it. قَالَتْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْمَلَأُ إِنِّي أُلْقِيَ إِلَيْكَ كِتَابٌ كَرِيمٌ. So what had happened now is that Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam had written this letter, and Hudhud went and presented it and gave it to Bilqis. There are different narrations mentioned, and here throughout this incident, where narrations are mentioned, अदब भी था कि आप तो ऐसा करके घूमते ना कि सीधे से अदब की बात नहीं था आपको अदब से बात है मदरसे में क्लास में नहीं होते क्लास स्टूडेंट्स नो दीस थिंग्स लेकिन सीखने की बात है सबके लिए तो Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam had given the letter to Hudhud. Now as I mentioned to you, when it comes to incidents, these incidents have not been mentioned in the hadith. Various mufassirin have mentioned these incidents from books of history or from maybe Israeli riwayat. So Hudhud then presented this letter to Bilqis. The manner in which he presented, different narrations are mentioned, in the form of that the doors of the palace of Bilqis were locked. But there was an opening in one of the windows. And some narrations have it that a specific window wherein the sun rays, the rays of the sun would enter through there. And that is what would awaken Bilqis, and that's when she would do sajda to the sun. So Hudhud either just flew in from there, or Hudhud remained there, and when the sun did rise, opened his wings in order to conceal the rays of the sun. In this way, Bilqis awakened a little later than normal. And that's when Hudhud, entered and dropped it on the laps of Bilqis. Another narration has it that while she was resting and lying, he dropped it on her chest or waited or just flapped the wings till she awakened and dropped it on her and then moved back. قالت, to which she says, يا أيها الملأ. When he dropped the letter on the queen's lap, when she opened it, read the contents, she said, O ministers, إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم. An honorable letter has been given to me. Why? So she says, أيها الملأ إني ألقي, she said to her ministers, and she says that this letter is what? Kareem, an honorable letter. The word Kareem is used for, as we've translated here, honorable. And honorable for a number of reasons. One is because it is from Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. That is why. And the other is the manner in which it was presented to her. But this was something abnormal, it wasn't something normal. That how the bird came, and the bird knew where to come, and the manner in which the bird dropped the letter and then moved on to the side, and just remained observing. So the manner in which this occurred, something that everybody saw, how the bird just came and dropped it and gave it and went. So on that basis, she says that this is Kareem. And then on top of it, as Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala and a few other Mufassirin mentioned, that Kitabun Kareem refers to all those letters which are stamped. Which are stamped. By stamped, not meaning your first class and second class stamp, not that type of stamp, so that in other words, if there's no stamp, that means you have to pay for the postage. No. By stamp means a seal, an official seal on it. And the official seal on it was that of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. Due to which you knew that this is from who this letter has come from Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. So when it has come from Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, then that definitely makes it as what? As an honorable letter. Did she know Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam? Because Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam didn't know of her at the time until Hudhud didn't bring the news to him. So this is understandable, because not all seniors will know the juniors, but juniors will hear or will have heard of the seniors. So Bilqis was aware of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, his kingdomship. Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam didn't know. So because there was the stamp was on it, that is what made it an honorable letter, so that it wasn't just an anonymous letter or from somebody who doesn't have any status. And this was something that was regarded as an authority, you can say, that the authorities would have a stamp on it, the seal, and that is what would make it auspicious. And this is something that Nabi Karim sallallahu ta'ala sallam had also adopted. That when Nabi Karim sallallahu ta'ala sallam began writing and giving da'wah to various emperors of the world, at that time when Nabi Karim sallallahu sallam wrote these letters, that's when the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala said to Nabi Karim sallallahu sallam that, "O Nabi of Allah, the custom is that these leaders will only accept letters which have come from some source of authority, that which has a stamp on it as well, an official stamp. There's a general letter, doesn't have any weight to it." So when this was mentioned, that's when Nabi Karim sallallahu ta'ala sallam then adopted a ring as well, which had Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah Rasul Muhammad on it, or Muhammad Allah Rasul on it, or Rasul Allah Muhammad, whichever. And Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam used the ring of his as what? As a stamp. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam also adopted that. Which shows that there is no harm, and neither is it against tawakkul to adopt such type of means, because that shows some weight and authority upon it. So in the past as well, whichever form it was, where you would have, whether it would be glued in a certain manner, in the seal, whichever form the seal was in. So this was regarded to be, this is what is regarded to be Ilayya Kitabun Kareem. In our times, we will say maybe a letter had, for example, an official letter had official stamp on it, or a letter that is now what enclosed in an envelope in a certain manner. So there are ways which were in the past, and now you'll have different ways. So in other words, an official letter. And when you receive an official letter with the letterhead and everything, the authority of it, the importance of it, comes to the forefront. So that's why she says, in Ulki ilayya kitabun kareem. إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. It is from Sulaiman, and it says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Allah ta'alu alayya, do not be arrogant against me, wa atuni muslimin, and come to me in submission. That's all the contents of the letter of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. But in these two verses, there are certain etiquettes that we learn from it. First of all, it says here, Allah Ta'ala mentioned that innahu min Sulaiman, which Bilqis has mentioned that it is from Sulaiman, that the content of the letter was innahu min Sulaiman, that it is from Sulaiman. And what is with regards to tafsir, this also indicates that she knew who Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was already when she read that this is from Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, so that authority was already there. But the etiquette that we learn from this is, and the etiquette that we learn from Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well is, one, that the sender's name should be on the forefront, it should be in the beginning. This is from the adab of writing. Now, for instance, if you were to write a letter, nowadays people don't write letters. They don't know what it is to write a letter and then to put it in an envelope and to seal it and go to the post office, get a stamp and post it to people. And neither will you receive letters in such a manner as well. So people are not really too acquainted, the generation now, the millennials, are not aware of this form of letter writing or so. In the past this was common. And if it's overseas, then you used to have airmail letters, which were, I don't know if you still get them or not, blue. There were blue airmail letters which you fold in certain manner and seal that and send those off. We know that because while studying abroad, those airmail letters were very, very important. Nowadays, you can be studying anywhere in the world. You can keep contact with your parents daily basis. Daily people will video calling. You're not even distance at all. But when we studied away, it was a case of once in a month, 2 months or so, you would get these airmail letters. So those airmail letters, just wait for those airmail letters. And it wouldn't just come nowadays, within days. It will take a week or so maybe to reach you or so. And then you write back, and then after a week it will reach home. And maybe after a couple of months now you'll receive another email letter, airmail, not email, airmail letter. So in this way, the etiquette here is, innahu min Sulaiman, that whoever the sender is, that the sender's name should be already at the beginning. Because those who do write a letter, if you just write off by saying, dear so and so, and then you write your whole letter, and then write at the bottom, at the end, you say from so and so. So what happens there is that the reader, the one who's received the letter, is going to have to look and search by who did this letter come from, where has it come from. Whereas if already from the beginning, you would have, like in the past, you will have on the top right corner, where you'll have the name and your address. So already from there, you would know that who has sent the letter. And this is the etiquette we find from here. And as well as when Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he wrote to any of the emperors as well, it was the same there, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, min Muhammad Abdullahi wa Rasulihi ila Azim al-Rum. So Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam would begin the letter as well with his name and title in the beginning. So in this way, it makes it easy for an individual that they're not like looking around, who's the sender, who's it come from, who has it come from. And then even those who do write by letters, then the etiquette would be that maybe at the back you would have your name, the sender's name and address. So already from there you know who has sent it to you. If you keep it anonymous, or there is no name, the person is going to be perplexed that who sent it, you don't even know who it is or so. This is against etiquette. Nowadays it's a bit simplified because you have email, and the email itself has the name a lot of the times. But then you will have those people who may have an email which is a bit anonymous, which they might not have their name in the email. There is very important for them as well that they should have their name there, so the sender's name is there as well, so that you know who the person is. Because unfortunately you do have people who send email as well, but their email name is something different. It might be just a nickname or so, it might just be their initials, it might just be their date of birth or some numbers, or it might just be some random somebody who sends emails, this is Allah Noor on it. Allah Noor, and the name is Allah Noor. You don't even know who the sender is then. So that is against etiquette. The etiquette is that if your email is such, have a name there. Unless it is something, email nowadays where you're contacting somebody where you want to remain anonymous for certain reasons. But otherwise the etiquette is that it should be clarified who it's from. Similarly, we find text messaging, WhatsApp messaging in that as well. People ask questions or they contact you without any name. Assalamu alaikum Mufti Sahab, how are you? But who are you? The fact, it's the first time you're corresponding. By a number, you're not going to know who the person is by the number. So etiquette is by right who you are. Just put your name there. Or you're corresponding with somebody after very long as well. There too, unless it's somebody who is a regular contact and it's not necessary that you're going to save the number of every person that contacts you as well. And you know that you're not going to be, or you're not so close to a person that they're going to have your number saved as well. Then etiquette is that put your name down so the person knows that who this is. How are you? This is a family house, family. Who are you? Who is the sender? Sorry. But politely nowadays people say, sorry, I have not recognized the number. So then they say, oh sorry, fula. So again, these are against etiquette. Etiquette is what we write already beforehand who it is. in the message, whether it is beginning. Although Fuqaha mentioned that it is allowed that you can write your name at the end, but etiquette would be to have it towards the front, towards the beginning, so that already from the onset a person knows who the letter is from. So that is one of the lessons that we learn from this. And the other is that innahu min Sulaiman wa innahu bismillahir rahmanir rahim. The fact that the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, when they would write the letters, they would have Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim written. The question then comes that what do you write first? You write the name of Allah, Bismillah first, and then your name. As here it seems that Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, he had his name first and then the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala, when he wrote to the emperors, Nabi sallallahu had Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim written first, min Muhammad, and then min Muhammad, the sender later. The Mufassirin have mentioned that when it comes to the sequence, both are permissible. Meaning that the fact that here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, innahu min Sulaiman, and then Bismillah ar-Rahman, to show that this is also allowed to have the sender's name first and then Bismillah. But preference and etiquette would be that which we find from Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's practice, where Bismillah would be written before the name, a person's name. And the other mentioned here is that the actual letter sent by Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, innahu min Sulaiman ila Bilqis. It was written in that format. Bilqis had already read and knew that this is from Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. Hence these were her words that she is saying already, look, innahu min Sulaiman. It is from Sulaiman. And then the contents of the letter starts from Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. On that basis, Sayyidina Sulaiman's name is before the name of Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim. This person may question why this in Sulaiman is write his name beforehand. So it is possible that because these are the words of Bilqis, she is narrating the contents of it, so she is mentioning that it is from Sulaiman, and the actual contents are Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim, and then what he does mention. But in the original letter, min Sulaiman was written after Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim. And then here we find from this as well, and from the letters of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that is it permissible that when you write to a non-Muslim, to write Bismillah first of all, and to write any verses of the Qur'an in form of giving them da'wat. From this verse and from the letters of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam wrote to the various emperors at the time, from there also we understand that yes, it is permissible to write verses of the Qur'an as form of da'wat towards the non-Muslims. That it is permissible. Then when it comes with regards to wuzu and taharat and those matters, those will not apply here, because where the verse is written in a form, in a letter or so, it does not make that the Qur'an. It is not the Mus'haf of the Qur'an. So for that reason it is allowed and permissible that you may write Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim or any verses of the Qur'an as form of giving da'wah to a non-Muslim. But at the same time the Fuqaha mentioned that where a person may know that the recipient of it is not going to show care towards it, or will deliberately belittle it, or will humiliate what's written or so, then there it is best to avoid written there, rather just suffice on the English of it and not write it. But otherwise, where that is not the case, it is allowed and it is permissible. Similarly, when it comes to the masala with regards to should you write Bismillah, should you write the name of Allah Ta'ala or not, what is, knowing that look, the person may not look after it or so. There too the Fuqaha mentioned that the one who is writing, his duty is he writes it, the recipient, it is their duty that they should show respect and honor and look after it. So the one who is sending the letter or whoever writes it should not worry about that. It is the recipient that who should show honor and respect to it. But when a person does know from the onset that people are not going to really give honor to it, they'll disregard it, they'll discard it in the dustbins or these type of things, then where it is better to avoid it, and where you know that the person will show respect to it, then it is fine in writing it. Similar as I mentioned to you, in writing such to a non-Muslim as well, it is allowed to write the Quran, verses of the Quran for them as well. And then the contents of the Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam letter was Allah ta'alu alayya wa atuni muslimin. So concise, but the weight of it was so much. Similarly, when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam wrote to the various emperors as well, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam did have one whole hour bayan written a thought. But there too the different letters Nabi Kareem wrote was so very short. Aslim taslim, But in those words, everything was also always mentioned. It was so charming, you can say, that it was comprehensive, concise, but so comprehensive. That is the miracle of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, that it would be, what they would say would be concise, but it would have a weight on it, it would have an effect on it. So it was just very moderate, not any lengthy, long discourse that would be written there at all, that would put a person on the boredom, make them bored reading it. So it was straightforward. Allah ta'adu alayya, do not be arrogant against me, meaning do not show arrogance and pride in what, in refusing to submit yourself, وَأَتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ, and come to me in submission, in obedience. In other words, it meant that Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam summoned them to him, so that when they come, then he can convey the message of Tawheed to them. Instead of just mentioning it in the letter, the whole message of Tawheed, summon them to him. So in this way, they can see who he is, and he can give them direct Tawheed, the message of Tawheed. Now when Bilqis received this letter, قالت يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى يستشهدون. Bilqis said to her ministers, she said, "O ministers, أفتوني في أمري, advise me in my matter." And here, أفتوني في أمري, this is where fatwa comes from, of asking for something important, mashwara, or asking for something important. So, أفتوني في أمري, advise me in my matter. For I shall not decide any matter until you are present with me. Meaning that مَا كُنْتُ قَاطِرًا أَمْنَ حَتَّى تَشْهَدُونَ. Until you do not give me support in this matter, I will not make a decision. Which shows that it is advisory as well, that those who are in authority or power should make mashwara, should take advice from those who are underneath them. It is not necessary that they have to abide by it or follow it, but at least what it does is that it gives you other opinions as well, and not only that, but it encourages and gives support to those who are under you as well. As Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam, when it came to important matters, Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam did not need to rely on the Sahaba, because Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala sallam would receive wahi as it is. But despite that, in order to encourage the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to do mashwara with the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala. That was for what? To encourage them, just to give them support as well, to make them feel inclusive, to make mashwara with them. So here Bilqis at the end was the one who would make the decision, but she consulted with them. And the benefit of shura, mashwara is that a person will get, a person may see something from a certain angle and may want to make a decision because of what the angle that they are seeing it through. And if you ask others, there may be other concepts, other ideas, other angles that they look at it from. So in this way, at least you get a number of different ideas. You can put those ideas together, or you may decide to choose a better idea, or you might think that, look, my idea is still the best, and stick to that. They replied, قَالُوا نَحْنُ أُولُو قُوَّةٍ. They replied that we are people of great might and fierce. According to the various riwayat, her ministers were 313, and each one commanded an army of 10,000. And there is mention of an even larger amount of ministers that she had. So one narration is of 313, and each minister commanded an army of 10,000. So what they said is that we are people of great might and fierce fighters. أُولُو قُوَّةٍ وَأُولُو بَأْسٍ شَدِيدٍ. Meaning that if there is a matter, if it's a case of having to fight with Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, then we are also have might and power as well. We have a large army, so we should be able to compete with him. But at the same time, وَالْأَمْرُ إِلَيْكِ. But ultimately the decision rests with you. After all, you are the leader. فَانْظُرِي مَاذَا تَأْمُرِينَ. Therefore you decide what commands you wish to issue. Therefore you decide, فَانْظُرِي مَاذَا تَأْمُرِينَ, what you wish to decide. Meaning we will support you in any decision that you take. Meaning, so they were better than those of the Banu Israel. We've seen in Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, where they said, "Idhab anta wa anta wa rabbuka." They said to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, "No, you and your Rabb go and fight with the Jabbarin. You're just going to sit here, we're not going to come with you." But here they said, what? When it comes to, if you give the decision to fight, we're willing to do that. If you decide to submit to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, then we are fine with that as well. To which she said, قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا عزة أهلها ذلة وكذلك يفعلون. That at the same time, because she had heard of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, she was wary as well. And to which she said that at the same time, although we do have might and power, but we have to be careful as well. Because إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية, verily when kings enter any town victoriously, then أفسدوها, they ruin it. وَجَعَلُوا أَعِزَّةَ أَهْلِهَا ذِلَّةً, and they humiliate its noble people, they abuse them. وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ, and this is what they will do. Meaning Sulaiman and his army, if they were to conquer us, or we fail to conquer them, then we have to think about the consequences of it as well. That they do not just come in nicely and politely and deal with us in a good manner and let us off the hook. But whenever they do such type of muluk, when they dakhlu qaryatan, they do not just leave it, they overturn it, they ruin the whole place. So this is something that we need to take into consideration. So we shows that she had some form of aql as well, she was an intelligent woman. So then she said that let us now instead put Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam to test. And let us therefore take no drastic action until we ascertain the strength and know whether Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam is a Nabi or is he just a king. Why? That knowing that if he is just a king, then fine. He has his army, we have an army to match him as well. So fine, we can go to war. If he is just a king, then fine, we can deal with him as a king. But if he is truly a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as they say, then there it will be a case of we can't, our army cannot match his army, we won't be able to defeat him in that sense. So Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu needs to be put to test. Let's see what he is. So what did she decide? She said, وَإِنِّي مُرْسِلَةٌ إِلَيْهِمْ بِهَدِيَّةٍ, I shall send a gift ilayhim to him. فَنَاظِرَةٌ, to see بِمَا يَرْجِعُ الْمُرْسَلُونَ, then see with what news the messengers return. Meaning after they bring their gifts, see what consequences, or see how Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam deals with it. Now what was the gifts? Again here the various different riwayat are mentioned. Riwayat again means not the hadith, the incidents mentioned. Imam Baghawi has put few incidents all collected from here and there together. And briefly it is a matter of that she sent a large army of prominent individuals, and they took with, or she gave bricks of gold as gift to Sulaiman alayhi salatu, gifts which were bricks of gold. Something it was four bricks or more. So there was bricks of gold, there was various rubies and very expensive stones. Along with that she had sent, some have 300, some have 100 male slaves and 100 female slaves as well. But what she had done is that she had the males dressed up as females and the females dressed up as males, as a test to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. So she had them dressed up in such a manner, and all sorts of gifts, expensive gifts were laden there as well. And according to some riwayat, it is mentioned that there was a box, a concealed box, and in that box there was a pearl. The pearl was with it, and there was some thread in it as well. And Bilqis, and some narrators mentioned there was a letter as well with certain questions that she had written in order to test Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam to gather whether he is a Nabi or not. And with regards to this box, she said to her minister that, look, give this to him, but ask him and he must say the two things. One is that he should mention to you what is inside it without actually opening the box. And if he's a Nabi of Allah, then he'll get information of it. And that he should now in that pearl make a hole in it and thread the thread through it. So she sent all this to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam already gathered information and news of what is occurring, either by means of Hudhud, who was there observing all these things, came and narrated to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. So what Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam did is that he commanded the jinns that from where he was stationed for 30 miles, distance of 30 miles, to laden the entire route with gold bricks. Laden the entire route with gold bricks. And then he told the jinns as well that gather the various creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from land and from sea. Such creation which people have not just seen. So not just your normal goats and sheep and cows and that, but unique animals that people have not seen. So these animals were gathered and they were put on the sides as well. Unique. And some were those from the sea as well. Sayyidina Sulaiman had seen. So these were gathered. So the whole route was. And Sayyidina Sulaiman also commanded that where these animals are standing, they should be standing on gold as well. So that when they need to, and their food should be put on the gold, and when after they're going to eat, they're going to relieve themselves. So when they relieve themselves, they should relieve themselves on gold as well. And then he had laid it out on one side, on both sides, over 300, 400 golden chairs. Where on one side he had scholars, ulama sat on one side, and on the other side his ministers were sat on that side. And then he had mentioned, and again I'm mentioning that these are not from the hadith. It is not from the hadith, so it could be 100% authentic. They may be mirch and masala with it as well. So Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam had those golden chairs, and then along with it, then he had the jinns, told them that you and your children as well form a line as well. So in this way, and then Sayyidina Sulaiman had his throne where it was. So now when these ministers of Bilqis, when they came with their 4 or 5 golden bricks of gold, and when they saw here that look, here the gold is nothing at all, the whole route is on gold, and not only that, but the animals are urinating on gold. That they are urinating on gold. Somebody mentioned that they actually threw this gold away. They discarded whatever they had brought with. That look, this is this is nothing at all compared to what Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, his animals are urinating on gold. And one narration has mentioned that Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam deliberately left 4 or 5 empty spaces of gold. So when he left those empty spaces, and because they had 5 pieces of gold, and the 5 spaces left empty, so they feared that maybe there might be those who think that we have stolen from there. So the gold pieces they had, they quickly just filled in the jigsaw. So so that they would not be accused of stealing and taking from there. But in this way they came, and already when they saw all these things, and they saw those unique animals who submitted to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam, and they saw the jinn, that already that created awe and fear within them. At the same time, Bilqis, who was intelligent, had already told them beforehand that look, see how he deals with you. If he deals with you with anger and wrath, then that is an indication. One is that if he accepts the gifts, that's an indication that he's a king. He's behind, he wants what? That we gift him, we pay tax to him, we submit to him, and he'll leave us to be. So, does he accept the gifts or not? That is one. That is how his conduct is with you. If he is a king, then he's going to show his wrath and anger towards you. And if he's a true Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he'll deal with you with compassion. So keep an eye on that as well. So one is they saw everything here, he is there. So he's not there for wealth, because what he has is already much more than what we have. The might and power that he has is much more. So that created the fear within them. But when they approached Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, he approached them and he reacted with them in form of compassion. Sayyidina Jibreel had already came and given wahi to Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, and he dealt with them compassionately. So that also indicated towards him being a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the other test was to mention what is in the box. again, where he was revealed, Jibreel alayhi salam told Sulaiman alayhi salam, and he said, this is what it is, a pearl. And the other test was to have a hole put in it, and then the threads to be threaded as well. That's when Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam then asked his ministers that how is this possible? How are we going to be able to do this? To thread a hole through the pearl and that. That's when somebody suggested that you get a worm, that maybe a worm, that worm will be able to eat through it and thread through it as well. And that was the case, it was. And a worm that eats through trees, that will have the ability to do so. Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam commanded for one, and he was able to communicate with them, and the worm carried that out as well, was able to do so. And then Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam said to the worm as well, that asked, what is your price? What is it that you want? He said, well, I just want that I should be guaranteed trees. A tree or so which I can eat on or do my work on. So that's guaranteed, that's for you as well. In this way, Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam passed whatever test had been placed to him by Bilqis, which proved the fact that he was actually a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now again, as I mentioned to you, these are just riwayat, narrations that have been mentioned. From that, and because these things do not really matter as to how much she gave, what she gave, the most important thing is what Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Qur'an is the reaction of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. That فَلَمَّا جَاءَ سُلَيْمَانَ, when the messenger came to Sulaiman alayhi salam to give, what did he say? He said, قَالَ أَتُمِدُّونَنِي بِمَالٍ. He said what? That do you wish to assist, meaning bribe me. Assist meaning here bribe. Do you intend to bribe me with wealth? When it comes to that, فَمَا آتَانِيَ اللَّهُ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا آتَاكُمْ. What my Rabb has given me is better than that which you have given me. What you've seen for yourself. What you have brought is nothing. So, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ بِهَدِيَّتِكُمْ تَفْرَحُونَ. When you return to center, it is you people who are pleased about your gift. Meaning that you be pleased with your gift. It's got nothing to, it's not going to please me at all. Because you are the ones who have love for treasures of this world. Well, I do not. So I do not need your wealth. You desire more. So you take that. But what all I desire is that you become from the mu'mineen. That is what it is. Irji ilayhim. Return to them. Addressing the message said, return to them with all the gifts. And فَلَنَأْتِيَنَّهُمْ بِجُنُودٍ. And warn them to look. If you refuse, then فَلَنَأْتِيَنَّهُمْ بِجُنُودٍ. Then we shall certainly march against them. بِجُنُودٍ. With an army. لَا قِبَلَ لَهُمْ بِهَا. That you will have no defense against. وَلَنُخْرِجَنَّهُمْ مِنْهَا. And we shall then certainly expel you from there. أَذِلَّةً وَهُمْ صَاغِرُونَ. From there in shame while they are humble, meaning defeated. Meaning that if this is the case, take your goods back. Either submit and come, or we're going to send an army towards you. So already from this reaction of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, it was already proven the fact that Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam was truly what? The Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wasn't just a king, but he was the Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then when this messenger came back to Bilqis, then knowing that this is what is the case, she understood as well that no, we have no option but to go to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam and see what he is that he has to say and submit to him at least, or at least listen to what he has to say. And then what happens from there is mentioned in the next verses, where the mention of Bilqis going to Sayyidina Sulaiman is mentioned there. So in these verses we've covered is till this aspect showing the great kingdomship of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam and the manner of him giving the da'wah to Bilqis. Allah Ta'ala grants all understanding. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.